Today with Nori Jabba, who is the author of the book Keeping Your Seat at the Table. Welcome, Nori.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, for those people who haven't already read your book, the basic theme is that you were a woman over the age of 25 who wanted to re-enter the workforce. You have a lot of skills. You had been self-employed, and previously you'd had corporate jobs, but you found that it wasn't just an immediate shoe-in to walk right into corporate America and say, "Hire me, hire me." Tell us how the book came about. And well, first of all,
Yes.
if there's anything I've missed, tell us that, and then tell us how the book came about.
Okay, so now you got it right. I'm over 25, just a little bit, more than double that. But yes, I'd been consulting for almost a decade, and I'd had a really, in my mind, successful consulting business. But I wanted to go back to employed work because I wanted the benefits. I missed the team. You know, when you're a consultant, you're on your own. And before COVID, doing remote work was different. You know, it was when COVID happened, I fit right in, but I was ready to get back to a team and the camaraderie. And, you know, I just missed that. Plus, I hadn't contributed to my IRA for 10 years. So it was time. And I have a lot of experience. I'd won lots of awards, great resume, just thought this wouldn't, I knew it would be hard, and I'd heard it's hard to get a job at that age, but I didn't realize how hard it would be. And I couldn't get a job. Nobody would hire me. Nobody. I occasionally would get interviews and come in second all the time. And after months and months and months of this, it was depleting my self-esteem. And I just decided, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, because if anybody's job hunting, if your self-esteem is depleted, that's not going to fare well in a job interview. So I gave that up and said, I'm going to just consult or start my own company if nobody will hire me, and write a book about it and research what was really going on. So I reached out to some of the people that didn't hire me and asked them if I could talk to them, because I'm writing a book. And I also joined an incubator program to kind of launch this tech company that I thought that I needed to do, because my self-esteem needed that. If nobody would hire me, I'm in Silicon Valley, we start companies, that's what we do. And then through that
Right.
process, I realized I don't really want to start a company. I want to write. And I realized my purpose and what I really was passionate about through the process of writing the book. I realized that writing the book is really what my passion was. So I focused on that and did research, and boy, did I learn a lot about ageism and what we can do to combat it in the workplace and in the hiring practices.
Cool.
So that's kind of my journey.
Now the slant that I'm currently viewing my lens through, because I'm in the middle of writing a book, and it's a book on marketing, and I define marketing as finding a fit between what you have to offer and what the market wants. And you had two experiences. You had the experience of not finding the fit, and then in the process of writing the memoir of in the process of writing the memoir of how you weren't able to find the fit, you found the fit.
I did.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful story, because my process worked, and that's really why I had to share it, because it did work. And, fit is so important. And in fact, if you talk to hiring managers, and you know this, it's the number one thing that people look for. Beyond experience, beyond skills, it is all where you went to school. None of it matters if you're not a good fit. And fit is very subjective. And so
so
I focused a lot on that.
so it's subjective, but yet it's rigorous enough that you were able to write to develop a framework and write a book about it. So,
Yeah.
what is that framework, right? If I'm somebody who wants to match myself to the market, what do I look at? How do I think about finding the needs that I can fulfill? Actually, and before we jump into the fit model itself, is this something that works just in a work context, just for employees, or does the fit model apply also to consultants or maybe our personal lives, etc.? Like, how universal is this model?
Yeah, so I call it the fit model, and my book is a play on words. Every chapter has a play on words, and the fit model is a play on words too. If anybody knows what a fit model is, it's the person who is a perfect size 6 or whatever, and all the clothes that the designer makes are designed around that person's body. So
I
they're called a
totally,
fit model.
I had never heard that term before. That
Yeah.
was completely
Yeah.
new.
So, yeah, Devil Wears Prada, I think they talk about it. But yeah, so I called it the fit model, and it's a series of questions that you can ask yourself when job hunting. Because what I was doing, I was getting anxious, like, wow, I'm not going to get a job. I better throw spaghetti at every wall in front of me and just hope that something sticks. And that's not really a good approach because fit does not enter into the spaghetti model. So I started asking myself some real questions about what do I want? What are my values? And it absolutely works for consultants, for employers, for employees. And I I encourage people who read my book and look at the fit model questions. If you bring it up in an interview, nobody talks about fit the employer might talk about a fit, but often people won't talk about what's the right fit for them. So asking questions of the company, having that confidence and saying, I want to make sure I'm a good fit here. So I want to ask you some questions. It just turns everything around. And I think it's really impressive to employers to have a candidate who is concerned about fit, because that is their
So,
number one
so
thing.
you just, so I want to jump in here. So you just kind of dropped a little bombshell there and then kept going, where you said you started by looking for your values. So presumably that's one part of the
Yeah.
fit model.
Yes.
So tell
Yes.
us about values and your how you got into that, but also how do you bring that up with an employer? How did you find that fit with an employer around values?
Well, corporate culture is really the employer's values and what they focus on, what's important to them, what's their philanthropy stance, how much volunteerism are they going to allow? Do they focus on professional development? Do you have to go to the office? Some corporate culture now, post COVID, so much of it is remote versus office work. And what is important to you as an employee? All employees want flexibility. And all employers need to give flexibility to a certain degree without reducing productivity. But, asking these questions on flexibility can be a little bit challenging.
So
I work for a
wait a second here.
company now.
I'm a
Yeah.
is flexibility specifically part of the fit model, or is that one of your values, and then you brought that into the questioning process?
So it is one of the questions that you need to ask yourself,
Okay.
because if you need major flexibility and the company you're applying for is a you must be in the office every day, no flexibility period company, you're not gonna fit in. You're not going to enjoy it, and you need to be true to yourself and realize that that is not a good fit. So it's
So
really about asking yourself these questions to decide what your needs are and advocating for your needs in your job hunt.
so flexibility, it sounds like, is one category of needs. What are some of the other kinds of needs that you recommend we ask for or ask about?
Yeah, so teamwork, hierarchy, some of these things are just really traditional, but I've worked for companies that are very military based and structured with a hierarchy that if you're at a lower level, you don't dare talk to somebody on the top. And that is considered absolutely taboo. And then you have companies where it's much more collaborative and cross sectional. And so asking yourself where you fit in with that. If you have a military background, you might do really well in that structure because that's what you know. And if you grew up in a much more collaborative environment and you just can't adapt to that at all, that's going to be a terrible fit. So
Now,
how the
how do you
corporate
determine
structures.
this? Like I know where I would fit in that in terms of like I'm like, you know what, if I can't walk up and have a conversation with the CEO, I'm not interested because
Yeah.
I have this weird personality quirk where I find it almost impossible to do a task unless I understand that the task is meaningful. And frankly, I've worked for some people who are complete idiots. If any of them are listening to this, be sure it wasn't you. It was one of the other people I worked for, and one of the things that I found is I need to be in an environment where I can seek to understand and possibly even have input into, or at least get listened to and get heard around some of the decisions that I'm going to be responsible for implementing. So there you are in a job interview. How do you suss that out? Because it seems to me that's the sort of thing that, if you're in a fear-controlled environment, they're going to be smart enough and politically savvy enough not to tell you that you're in a fear-controlled environment.
Yeah,
So,
and I think, corporate websites can help a lot with this, how the website is structured, because if it's secretive or it's not transparent about who's on the team and there's, one way to contact and there's no ability to see what the corporate structure looks like, that's a signal that it's not very collaborative, right? And it could be wrong. Maybe they just have a website that they chose to do a certain way. So I think you just need to straight out ask. And I think a company interviewing you, a HR manager or whoever it is is open to that. And, do you interact with the CEO? Do your team members interact with the CEO? And what is the corporate structure? Is it hierarchical? Is it more collaborative? And just
see, now,
asking these
now
kind of
you just you
open-ended
just
questions are good.
you just gave us two different questions, and I think that the distinction actually is really important
Yeah,
because when you ask, do you interact with the CEO, they can't really lie about that. I mean, they could
that's
lie,
right.
but they could say, "Sure, I do," and then you could say, "Really, on what topics?" And all of a sudden, they're caught. But if you ask, "Are you hierarchical or do you get your voice listened
Yeah.
to?" they could lie about that, and
Yes.
it wouldn't. So okay, so
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 asking both is important, and getting to know the person who's interviewing you by asking those questions about them. Like you said, they have to be more transparent. So it's a really good way to learn what's really going on behind the scenes.
okay, so we have collaboration and teamwork. We have hierarchy. We have flexibility.
Mhm.
What else? How else should we be assessing fit? Is there anything
So
around the job? Well, one of the things I'm gonna spill the beans for anyone who's listening here. Nori and I actually had a conversation prior to this live stream, and one of the things that we talked about is that when you're a consultant, as she is and I am and have been in the past, you develop often a general set of skills. So you have a toolbox that can apply in lots and lots of different situations because that's what consultants do is they go into lots of different
mhm.
situations. However, corporations typically hire for a particular box. And there can be a really serious mismatch between, hey, look at all the things I can do, and the corporation that says, I want someone who has done exactly the same thing for the last 25 years. Could you talk to us about fit between like your qualifications and your background and your work history
Yeah.
and what the company wants?
Yeah. So one of my biggest problems in job hunting was that I had become too much of a generalist. And when you're job hunting, I have learned that you need to be in a box. They really want a tight box. And if you look at qualifications and on job listings, the box is clear. And even if you fit in that box, if you are a generalist and your resume shows that you're not in the box, or you have other things, they're going to turn you down because they're often so narrow-minded. So fit if you are a generalist and you are applying for a job where they do not want you to be a generalist, that's going to be a big problem. So again, you might not even get an interview because I would create multiple types of resumes. I would have my generalist resume, and then I would have my very narrow box resume. So, if I'm looking for a job that is just in housing, my resume is going to reflect just housing. I might sprinkle in a few other things, but I'm going to focus on that. Whereas if I'm looking for a job with a broader topic that I'm going to be working on, housing and economic development, or housing and something else, I'm going to add other things in there. So being able to have more than one resume is really important. But asking if you do get to the interview, just sussing out whether they need you in a box or they're looking for skills beyond that is really key. And I don't really have the perfect advice for how to ask those questions. You just have to kind of ask them. And I do think that being bold in an interview and asking those questions is really important. And, for me, I love learning new things. I want to be in a company that is going to promote that and give me the ability to get outside of my box and to learn to cross train in other positions and to learn new things and learn new technologies. And so that's one of my first questions is, tell me about professional development opportunities at your company, because I think it's really, really important. And the bigger ones, bigger corporations, are usually, they have robust programs, but they might still want you in the box, so asking those kind of questions and letting them know you like to learn new things and you want to grow in your position, but also within the organization. And
So
if they
is
give
that
you
like, is that like
answers but they're
another
not interested,
is that another piece of the fit model? The
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
A
Um,
fit model is a long series of questions, and some of them are just some of them are about the organization, but some of them are just about you. I really wanted this job that I didn't get, obviously, and it was 60 miles away from home, and I had convinced myself that, "Oh, I can handle that commute." And honestly, I'm so glad I didn't get that job, because the commute would have killed me. It would have done me in. Who wants that? And I had to drive, it wasn't a public transit commute opportunity. And so the fit model, not only, I was that spaghetti on the wall at that time. I just need a job, and this is a great job, and I would be good at this. And so I convinced myself that a 60-mile commute would be okay. It's not. It's just not. So being honest with yourself and what your needs are and what you can handle. And I commuted for 10 years, an hour and 20 minutes each way. And I can tell you, it is the main reason that I stopped that job, because it did me in. Forget the growth and everything at that, and I didn't want to move, or I couldn't move at the time.
so
So,
Well, what was I've been kind of trying to tease out here some elements of the fit model and
yeah.
discuss a few of those,
Yeah, and you have
but
to read the book. I'm not going to give you all the answers.
right, um, but you wrote this as a memoir,
Yes,
not as a business book where you outlined here's the elements of the model,
right.
etc.
Well,
Can you
it's kind
talk a
of
little
both.
bit? Yeah, well, my favorite. Um, can you tell me a
Again,
little
I
bit?
don't fit into the box, right? I don't fit into the box. So it's not just a memoir. I classified it as a memoir, but I called it a memoir and a guide, because it really is. It's my journey, but I developed this 8-step framework for getting your seat back at the table and keeping it. And so it is much more than a memoir. But again, I don't fit in the box. And that's my biggest problem. I didn't fit in the box that everybody was looking for, because I'm interested in too many things. I'm good at too many things, and I like doing too many things. And when you're job hunting, they are looking for a very narrow definition of what that
So,
job
what
is.
was the hardest part of finding that fit? I mean, we opened by talking a little bit about ageism and gender, and we haven't really come back to that at all. Was
No,
that actually a problem, or is that just the hook that you're
it's
using to talk about the book? I mean,
no.
how does that?
No, it was a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And so I had several things working against me. One, I had too many years of experience, and that is a tip-off that you're going to cost too much, because they can hire somebody much younger for much lower, entry level or mid-level or whatever. And they often will just discount you because you have too many years of experience, because your salary expectations are going to be too high. So I heard that all the time. Your salary expectations are too high. But as a woman, I, I don't have any specific I don't have any specific data for you. I didn't research this scientifically, but what I was told by the head of a workforce training program was that the average woman over 50 has to submit 500 resumes before they get a job. So, and I don't even know how many I said had submitted by that time, over 100. And she just kind of patted me on the shoulder and said, "You have a long way to go, honey."
Yeah,
And uh,
you've made it through 100, only 400 more to go.
right, right. And that just did not sit well with me. So I just started thinking about why is that and what can I do to make that different? And so the fit model was really important because what the fit model did is it gave me the confidence to own my needs and what I was looking for. And a lot of the book is about regaining confidence. In fact, the subtitle is a memoir and guide on regaining confidence in middle age. And so developing that confidence in yourself and how you present yourself, for me, I think was one of the major things.
So how to tell me how to regain my confidence? Because I'm torn between the desire to look like a sage old man,
Yeah.
and to look 25 if I can possibly find any way to do it, and
I,
I end up
well,
with
I
no
think
confidence.
you're doing a great job. Let's put it that way. But, as an experiment for the book, I stopped coloring my hair. And I hated coloring my hair. Roots showing after 3 weeks is not a confidence booster. And just it's a reminder that you're growing older and looking in the mirror and seeing the wrinkles too. So I stopped coloring my hair. And boy, was I ahead of the game because this was a little bit before COVID started. So when COVID started, my color was down to here while everybody else was growing out their hair. I fit right in. Again, fit. But I found through this experiment that people treated me better. And
Better.
why was that? Yeah. So, they say hide your age, right? Color your hair, look younger, take your year off your resume that you graduated from college, all of these things to hide how old you are. And so I decided with this, and I started looking at women who had gray hair or white hair or um, in powerful positions. And every single one of them had a confidence about her that was undeniable. And so that they started being role models for me. Like, why are we told to stop being ourselves and to have to look younger? These women are super powerful, and one of them even told me that she felt like her gray hair helped her be in a position of knowledge and experience. And wow, that was a surprise because it was completely opposite.
So, question here, because you said a minute ago that having too many jobs on your resume was kind of a red flag and people would discard you, without how do you reconcile the two of these things? On one hand, having the gray hair helped. On the other
Yeah.
hand, having a long resume did not.
Yeah, yeah. And it is a balance. And I think it all comes down to how you present yourself and presenting yourself with that confidence and owning your age. So I do not hide my graduation years on my resume anymore. I am proud of everything that I brought to the table, but I think one of the things that, and this is something I learned from one of the HR managers, is that there can be too much confidence, right? When you go into a job interview and it's all about what you can bring to the table, it's it can work against you. So there's this balance of humility and experience and knowledge and power. And there's also, you have to demonstrate that you're still able to grow and learn and listen. So what I heard from one of the HR directors I met with is that, oh, older women don't listen. They just want to talk all the time and share their experience instead of listening to
That
others.
sounds just a tad sexist, by the way. I'm just saying.
It really does. And it was, I did not I wanted to not listen and put my fingers in my ears when she said that. And fortunately, she was a middle-aged woman, because if she'd been like a 25-year-old or a man, I probably would have gotten up and walked away like, we're done here. But I realized, I was doing exactly what she said that older women did by not wanting to listen. So I sat up and I leaned in and I said, I'm gonna hear what she has to say. And I thought and thought and thought about it. And for me, and I think everybody needs to think about this for themselves and their own experience, but for me, I know that I was guilty of that. I definitely was, because I had had to fight to be at the table when I was at the table so much that I would look for opportunities to jump in and share my expertise rather than sitting back and absorbing what people were saying. And I think that's very typical of women. I think about a meeting that I was in with a table filled with 8 or 10 men, and every time I tried to add value, I was shut down, dismissed, interrupted, or just passed over. And so I stopped listening to what everybody was saying, other than listening to find the appropriate moment to jump in and make myself heard. So it became about making myself heard instead of hearing and listening. And so for me, I took that to heart, and I didn't agree with everything she said, because I think women do have to fight to be heard, and it's not fair. And so, but for me, I decided I'm going to be a better listener. I am going to really focus on that and make sure that I am balancing my growth and listening and learning and being vulnerable. Brene Brown, vulnerability is
Yep.
strength. She's one of my heroes, and she really helped me get my seat back on the table, because I realized, being vulnerable, and it is so important, and it's important for your confidence to be vulnerable. It's definitely not a weakness, but being vulnerable also opens you up to listening and learning. So it is a balancing act. And
So
showing that in an interview, that you have a lot to share and you want to be heard because you have all this experience, but you are also vulnerable, team player, good listener, collaborative, and you want to grow and learn. So let me just share this. My boss is decades younger than I am. Decades. Before I went through my journey, there is no way I would feel good about myself in that situation. But now, after going through this, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And I encourage everybody to think about that and to seek out a younger boss. Well, when you get to my age, they're either older or, they're
well,
retired if they're
or
older
retire,
most of the
right?
time.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
we've only got about a minute and a half left on our recording time here. So, what is it that people should? So, first of all, what is the book? Where can people find it? I think you even had one you could hold up. You could hold up
Yeah,
to the
I
camera.
do.
Keeping your
So it's
seat.
called
Whoops. Yeah,
Keeping Your
keeping your
Seat at
seat
the
at the table.
Table. Yeah, go in the middle.
Other direction. Yep.
Sorry, camera.
Right there. Uh, a memoir and guide. Uh, where can people find it? Where can they find you? And before you say those two things, is there anything that we absolutely have to know before you leave that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, so it was a wonderful journey. I did get my seat back at the table through the process of writing the book, and I'm on to another job now, that's a better fit for me. And it's a wonderful process to go through. So I encourage you to read the book. It is for women, but men can learn from it too. That everything we've talked about applies to men as well. And it's just as hard for men to get jobs over 50. And if you're over 60, forget it, right? So the book definitely applies to men and women. And I am writing a second book, and it's everybody else's journeys and a compilation of other people's stories, because my story is just mine. But I know there are so many others out there, and we have so much value to add and share and learn from each other about this process. So you can buy the book on Amazon. It's also on barnesandnoble.com, and you can request it from a bookstore or a library. I set that up. It's also on Audible, and it's my voice, which was a very interesting experience and really wonderful experience and so hard to do. And yeah, and you can reach me on my website, norijabba.com. I also have a website for the book called keepingyourseat.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Nori Jabba on the planet. So if you do Google me, you'll get a little Jabba the Hutt and a little bit about sushi as well, but I'm right there.
All right, so I think that if there's just one thing that people walk away with in terms of how to contact you, it's your name, Nori Jabba,
Yes.
which is unique. So you can find her everywhere. LinkedIn, Barnes and Noble, all her own
Yeah.
website, all the places. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm Steve Robbins. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Steve.